Atlanta. And the president defended his ban, saying this is not a Muslim ban, as the media is falsely reporting. This is not about religion. This is about terror and keeping our country safe. Let's talk it over now with a man who has advised Donald Trump on national security issues, James Carafano. He is the Heritage Foundation's Vice President of Foreign and Defense Policy Studies. He was a member of the Trump transition team. And James, it's interesting because you actually were an advisor when it came to DHS, to the Department of Homeland Security, and really between the election and between the inauguration, you knew that this was going to be coming. Why then was this not, a lot of people have looked at it and said this could have been rolled out a lot better. He could have had a better understanding of how this was going to go from Department of Justice lawyers, and the Department of Homeland Security could have been looped in a lot better.
Right. So I did work on the transition team, and the first thing is there's only one president at a time. So you really can't go into a department and start issuing orders before January 20th. So there's a limited amount of things you can do. And I would also say, in terms of the drafting of the orders, if there's one thing the transition team didn't lack for, it was a lot of lawyers. So the notion that no lawyer looked at this or they didn't have any competency on that, I'm not sure that's a fair criticism. So I think what is fair to criticize is the administration hasn't been out there kind of defending this thing as vociferously as they might have could. And I think part of that is because they've been so anxious to roll so many executive orders out the door. I think by next week, we'll probably have another raft of executive orders, and we'll all be talking about something else.
Well, why didn't they defend this vociferously? And it also seems as if, you say that, but Donald Trump himself issued a statement today, and he seemed to try to put a softer spin on this, and then you had the head of the Department of Homeland Security talking about how green card holders aren't going to get caught up in this.
So what I would say is the president's tweet is actually 100% accurate. The purpose of the executive order is to deal with the emergent threat. So it's not about politics, it's not about campaign promises, it's about the reality that tens of thousands of foreign fighters flowed into Iraq and Syria, and that as ISIS loses space, the remaining foreign fighters are going to outflow.
But you see how it can't be divorced from the campaign promise, right?
No,
I mean, he made a promise at a time when there was a big concern about ISIS.
All I can talk about is the reality of what we talked about in the transition team, which was not about politics, not about campaign promises, but about national security. And everybody in the world, not just the United States, agrees that the foreign fighters are going to outflow to those 7 countries, and that the 2 likely avenues of exit, if you want to go do a terrorist attack, is either by getting a visa or going through the refugee stream. And we know that because we've already seen it happen in Europe. And so that was the purpose of the executive order, period.
Okay, I want you to listen to what the former British Foreign Secretary David Miliband said about this travel ban.
Remember, the only people celebrating today are extremists around the world who want to tell Muslims around the world that America is shutting their doors to them. The only people celebrating this propaganda gift are ISIS and Al-Qaeda, for whom this plays into their core narrative of a clash of civilizations.
And James, we've heard some Republicans raise this issue too,
right,
that this is something that will ostracize Muslims, that could make some of them even more sympathetic to terrorists and their message, and this could be a great recruitment tool for ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Is there a point there?
No. So I've heard that kind of silly criticism before. Here are the facts that we know. President Obama came into office dedicated to show a more positive face and more positive engagement in Islam, and that started with his speech in Cairo. So this administration spent 8 years, in a sense, trying to show a positive face in this issue. And the face of terrorism has exploded over the last 8 years. There are more terrorist attacks globally. There are more victims globally. There are more terrorist plots against the United States. So if it was just about talking nice, then we wouldn't have seen the threat metastasize like what we have. And I think it's really simplistic and stupid to argue that there's a linear relationship between one thing and another. I mean, that's almost true for nothing to do with terrorism. To suggest that it's true in this place, that's, I think, reflective of let me finish. It's mostly what we see here is people's view on this is based on their politics, not based on the facts. Period.
James, this isn't my opinion. I'm talking about people who have given advice to Donald Trump or publicly said things. For instance, General David Petraeus in the past has said, you engage in talk like this, and it is a recruitment tool. You basically just, you just agree to disagree.
Well, so for example, one of the things President Obama said was that Gitmo was the greatest recruitment tool.
But I'm talking about. That's not my point. James,
it gets
my
exactly
question
to the
is
point.
not, I'm not talking, I see the difference between President Obama and Donald Trump on this. I'm talking about someone like General David Petraeus, who Donald Trump considered having as a part of his cabinet, and also Republicans who are saying this. I'm not talking about President Obama.
Yeah, and
are
I'm
you
not
saying
talking
that
about,
they don't have a point?
Well, I'm not talking about any advisors, right? Because they can defend their own comments. I'm just saying, as an analyst who factually looks at the data, right? We haven't seen that kind of correlation. People said that Gitmo was the greatest tool, recruiting tool, that ISIS ever had. And yet people have actually looked at the data, actually found that that was not true. They could not find a direct correlation between Gitmo and the propaganda that ISIS was using. So
I'm
ISIS
talking about the language. I'm not talking about.
But I'm saying is ISIS hasn't done any recruiting yet. So for people to draw that conclusion, what they're doing is they're projecting their politics and their views and their beliefs, and that's fine. They can do that. They're entitled to their opinion. But as an analyst that looks at the data, traditionally what we've seen is when we have these arguments about this is ISIS grading recruiting tool, 99.999% of the time, that reflects a political opinion as opposed to the reality of what ISIS does and what actually motivates people to take up the cause of terrorism.
All right, I will say there are some certainly military voices out there that disagree with you on that, respectfully.
Well, that's fine.
I'm
They
sure.
can do that.
Yep, they can.
I just deal with the data.
All right, James Carafano, thank you so much. We certainly appreciate you being with us and bringing your insight, especially as someone who advised the Trump transition. We're really glad you could be on with us, and we are going to be right back.
Thank you.
Audi pilotless vehicles have conquered highways, mountains, and racetracks. And now, much of that same advanced technology